In the unforgiving skies of the Colorado highlands, former medevac pilot Cassie Moran risks everything to deliver critical patients through blizzards, war zones, and bureaucratic barriers. When a forbidden flight path turns into a military standoff, a forgotten flag from her past changes everything, turning threats into protection and legend into legacy. As her solo missions grow into a movement, Cassie becomes the heartbeat of a new generation of pilots who carry her courage into the storm. Welcome to my channel. You don't expect a quiet morning flight to turn into a standoff with 2 attack helicopters. But then again, I never expected a lot of things that happened in my life. My name's Cassie Moran. I'm 42, a former medevac pilot who now runs a ragtag emergency airlift outfit called Pulse Line. We operate out of a hangar on the edge of the Colorado highlands, where roads vanish under snow and time waits for no one. That morning, I was ferrying a 6-year-old boy with acute asthma from a backcountry clinic in Pine Bend to Denver General. The kid was fading fast. His mother clutched him in the back of my chopper, whispering prayers between panicked breaths, while I pushed my old Aerospatiale AS-350, paint peeling, rotor whining like a mule, through a sky I'd once called home in combat. The first sign of trouble came from the radios. That cold, metallic voice. Unidentified aircraft. You have entered restricted airspace. Alter course immediately or prepare to be escorted. I keyed the mic. This is Pulse Line 1. Civilian medical emergency in progress. Request immediate corridor clearance to Denver General. Negative, Pulse Line. No medical exemptions for this zone. Divert or be intercepted. Now, I've had more pleasant conversations with rattlesnakes. I checked my map. I'd cut through a sliver of military exclusion zone. Wasn't intentional, but every minute mattered. An alternate route would tack on 20 more. We didn't have 20. The kid in the back was barely holding on. I looked over my shoulder and saw the mother's eyes, pleading, terrified. I had seen that look before, in war zones and disaster zones, and it always made something deep in me go ice cold and steel hard. I repeat, I told the radio, this is a critical medical emergency. Patient is decompensating. I'm continuing on current heading. The radio went quiet for 2 long seconds. Then, Pulse Line 1, you are in violation of federal airspace restrictions. Military aircraft are en route. Comply or face consequences. A chill ran down my back, not from fear, but from knowing how fast this could all go sideways. I wasn't flying a combat bird. My bird was civilian, retrofitted with medical gear, not flares or chaff. If they wanted to shoot me down, I wouldn't even make a smudge on their windshield. And then I heard it, thump, thump, thump. Fast and steady, like war drums. 2 black shapes appeared on the horizon, fast and low. Apaches. Mean ones. They were coming in hard, like wolves closing in on a wounded deer. I could see the glint of the chin gun under the lead bird. A gun I'd seen melt steel at 1,000 yards. And still, I held course. My hands didn't shake. I'd flown into burning cities under mortar fire. I'd landed in storm-flooded valleys where nobody else would go. You don't get to pick your odds in this job. You just make peace with them. Unidentified rotorcraft. Came a different voice now. Cocky, nasal, young. Looks like someone wandered out of the toy aisle. This is your last warning. Turn it around, or we'll turn you into a cautionary tale. I wanted to yell. I wanted to say, there's a child in here, you arrogant punk. This isn't a joyride. But yelling never helped. I'd learned that too. Apache lead, this is Pulse Line 1, I said. Critical child transport. Non-combatant. I will not divert. I will not stop. There was a beat. And then he said it. Wrong answer, sweetheart. I saw the lead Apache pull up ahead of me, then roll right across my path. The chain gun moved just a little, tracking me. It wasn't fired up yet, but I knew that angle. They were locked in. I looked back. The boy's lips had a bluish tinge now. His breathing was shallow, chest barely moving. His mother had tears running silently down her cheeks, mouthing, please. So I did what I always did when it counted. I kept flying. I don't remember feeling fear. Not then. Not when the Apaches boxed me in. I remember the sound, whoop 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 of their rotors mixing with mine, the press of air that made my skids tremble. I remember how small my bird felt next to theirs. Like a kid's paper kite trying to dance with eagles. Pulse Line 1, the lead Apache barked. Final warning. Land or be engaged. Behind me, the boy gasped, a sound I'd heard too many times in field hospitals. the gasp of lungs running out of runway. I tapped the mic. "You fire on me," I said calmly. "And the only thing you'll kill is a 6-year-old boy who never asked for this." Silence. Then a voice crackled through. "Control, this is Apache 2. Request permission for warning shots." My stomach dropped. But then I heard something else in the background. That voice, quieter, almost like a mutter. Wait a second." Apache 2 veered in behind me, flying close, too close. I could see the shine of his targeting optics scanning my tail. He was looking at something. I didn't know what, until his voice cut back in, and it didn't sound cocky anymore. "Control, hold off. I see something. Wait." I looked over my shoulder, confused, just as the radio exploded. "Abort. Abort all intercepts. Stand down." That's Freedom Rescue. Freedom Rescue. My old unit's nickname. Not the official one, but the one whispered in dark corners of battlefields. We'd been medevac cowboys, flying in and out of no-go zones, picking up the broken and breathing under fire. And we'd flown under one flag, literally. A hand-stitched flag that flew from the tail of my chopper, the one they were looking at right now. It was old, faded, torn in one corner where shrapnel had punched through in Helmand Province. Someone, Doc Morales, I think, had sewn it up with dental floss and thread from a trauma kit. It had gone with me to Syria, Haiti, and back to the Rockies. I never took it off, and someone in that Apache recognized it. "Control," came the second pilot's voice again, quieter this time, shaky. That's the unit flag from the Kinshasa airlift. My brother was on that mission. She pulled him out herself." Another pause. Then a new voice on the line, older, measured, laced with command. "Pulse line 1. This is Colonel Riva. You are cleared to proceed on current heading. Escort will be provided. Godspeed." I blinked, not sure I'd heard right. The two Apaches peeled off their hostile approach, swinging into formation alongside me, protective now, not predatory. One to my right, one to my left. The sky around me went quiet, except for the rhythmic churn of rotors. And just like that, the world turned upside down. "Pulse line," said a different voice, Apache 2 again. "Ma'am, I didn't know. My brother was Sergeant Felix Moore. You saved his life in '09. I closed my eyes. I remembered Felix. Frag legs, shrapnel through his hip. We'd landed under fire, patched him in the air. He'd smiled at me, blood in his teeth, and said, "Guess it's not my time, ma'am." He'd given me a patch off his vest before they medevaced him out. "Tell your brother," I said. I still carry that patch in my flight bag. The radio went quiet. I think he was crying. Beside me, the Apaches fell into perfect alignment. Guardians now. Shadows on either side. All for a kid they'd never met. All because of a flag they hadn't seen in years, but had never forgotten. And behind me, the boy took a breath. A real one. The kind that gives you hope. The boy's breathing had steadied, but barely. His mother still held him tight in the back, her eyes wide as she watched the Apaches flanking us. She didn't speak, not out loud, but her lips moved in silent thanks, over and over. Maybe to me. Maybe to something bigger. As for me, I was flying on instinct, hands steady on the cyclic, scanning the gauges, listening for any new orders from the voice that had changed everything. Colonel Riva. I didn't know her, but I recognized the cadence, that no-nonsense authority laced with calm. It was the kind of voice you followed when the world was burning. "Pulse line 1, she called again. You are cleared through restricted airspace. Maintain current course. We'll coordinate civilian ATC to clear your descent. Apaches will stay with you." Copy that. And that's when it really hit me, not just what was happening, but how far we'd come. See, back in the day, our team didn't have clearance for half the places we flew into. We were ghosts. We ran missions through disputed zones and blackout areas, always one glitch away from being disavowed. The flag I flew wasn't regulation, it was memory. And memory, I've learned, carries more weight than any official patch. As we approached the edge of Denver's control zone, the sky shifted from blue to gold. Late afternoon sun angled low across the mountain ridges, lighting up the Apaches like something from a war movie. I don't know if the folks down below noticed. Maybe some kid pointed up and asked his dad why a dusty medevac bird had a military escort. Maybe nobody did. But I noticed. "Pulse line," came another voice. "Apache lead. This is Commander Everett. Just wanted to say, it's an honor to fly with you." "Likewise," I said, and I meant it. "Wasn't sure we'd make it past your warm welcome." He chuckled softly. "Yeah, I deserve that." I didn't reply. Didn't need to. Because here's the thing about guys like Everett and Torres, they weren't bad. Just young. Young enough that they'd never been in a field hospital holding a dying kid's hand. Never hauled someone out of a burning convoy by their flak vest while bullets zipped past their ears. They followed rules because the rules were all they'd ever known. But now, they'd met something else. And it shook them. At 10 miles out, I saw the hospital pad. Denver General. Roof unit. I keyed the mic to the ER channel. This is Pulse Line 1. ETA 3 minutes. Pediatric respiratory distress. 7-year-old male. Need full code red on arrival. They confirmed instantly, and I could already see the figures in blue gowns assembling on the rooftop. Like clockwork. Apache lead, I called. I can take it from here. Negative, he said. Freedom doesn't fly solo, remember? I smiled. Damn right. As we banked into final approach, the Apaches moved with me, like wings folding inward. We dropped in together, 3 aircraft cutting across the Denver skyline as if it were just another battlefield. I eased onto the pad. The second my skids touched down, the ER team moved in like a race crew, lifting the boy out, oxygen mask pressed tight, his mother following close behind, dazed but moving with purpose. I powered down. My hands finally shook, not from fear, but from release. From knowing I'd done what I was built to do. One more life delivered. As the rotor slowed, I looked up. The Apaches hovered briefly above, then one by one, dipped their noses in a final silent salute, and peeled off into the sunset. After the ER team rolled the boy away, I sat in my cockpit for a minute longer than I needed to. The rotors had stopped. The world was still. But my heart hadn't quite caught up. You don't always realize the toll until the adrenaline fades. Then I heard boots on concrete. Turned my head. Lieutenant Mark Torres stood a few feet from my skids, helmet tucked under his arm, when tugging at his flight suit. He looked younger than I expected. Clean cut. Not the type you'd peg as someone who'd cry over a memory. But I saw it in his eyes, what he'd recognized when he saw that flag. I opened the door and climbed down. He waited, standing at attention like I was still in uniform. Ma'am, he said, voice quieter now. I just needed to say thank you. My brother, Felix Moore, you pulled him out of a blast zone outside Cost in 2009. I stared at him for a moment, then reached into my flight bag. Pulled out a patch. Faded, frayed, half-burned at the edges. His brother's unit insignia. He gave me this, I said, after I hauled him into the bird. Told me to pass it on if I ever met someone who still gave a damn. Torres took it like it was made of glass. His fingers trembled. He never told me he gave that away. He probably didn't want you to know how scared he was, I smiled. I saw him cry that day. Not for himself. For the guys he couldn't save. He talks about you, you know, Torres said. About the pilot who flew through hell for 6 wounded men and came out with all 6 breathing. I shrugged. That was the job. Still is. He looked around. This old bird, it doesn't look like it should even fly. I patted the chopper's side. She's got heart. That's what matters. Then he looked at the tail. The flag. You never took it down? Never will. He was quiet a moment longer, then stepped back and saluted. A real one. No irony, no protocol. Just respect. When he dropped his arm, I could see the shift in him. The arrogance from earlier had melted away. He saw me not as some relic from the past, but as someone who'd never stopped flying. Before he turned to leave, he asked, why'd you do it? Why risk it when you knew the odds? I didn't have to think. Because that boy in the back? He deserved the same chance your brother got. No kid should die waiting for permission. He nodded slowly. We're gonna tell people about this. The guys. The base. They need to know. Tell them the flag still flies, I said. That's enough. As he walked away, I caught my reflection in the cockpit glass. Worn, tired, older than I remembered. But the eyes were the same. The ones that used to stare out at war zones, waiting for the signal to dive in and lift someone home. And for the first time in a long while, I felt something shift. Not pride. Not victory. Peace. 3 days later, my hangar felt different. I was standing on a ladder, refueling the bird, when I heard a knock on the metal wall. I turned, and there he was again, Torres. This time in civvies, a paper bag in one hand and a hesitant grin on his face. Didn't think you'd come back, I said. I brought coffee, he replied, holding it up like an offering. That's how it started. He didn't just bring coffee. He brought questions. About flying under pressure. About what I would have done differently. About how to make the right call when all you've got is wrong options. I answered the way I always do, honestly. No sugarcoating. No buzzwords. Just the truth, as ugly and beautiful as it is. After Torres left that day, more came. Young pilots, combat medics, even a few ground crew from the local reserve wing. They drifted in one by one, like whispers on the wind, all wanting the same thing, understanding. Not the kind you get from manuals or mission debriefs, but the kind you earn in the field, bleeding next to the people you're trying to save. I didn't give lectures. I didn't stand on soapboxes. I showed them how to clean a rotor, how to make field repairs with duct tape and stubbornness. I walked them through my old flight logs, let them see the margin notes, the scribbles made in real time while dodging flak over Aleppo, or when the fuel gauge hit red with 2 kids still on board. They listened. Not because I was some war hero, but because I was still doing the job. Then one day, I got a letter. Official envelope. Pentagon seal. Inside was an invitation, Colonel Riva herself asking if I'd consider consulting on emergency airlift protocols for field medics and remote evac pilots. Your experience, she wrote, cannot be taught in classrooms, but it must be passed on. I sat on my workbench for a long time after reading that. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because part of me had assumed I'd already given all I had to give. Turns out, I'd just been waiting for the right time. I sent a reply. Not a yes, not a no. Just this. Sky Angel doesn't land for ceremonies, but we're always open to flight time. In the weeks that followed, the calls came more frequently. A med-evac team in Idaho asked for assistance crossing mountain terrain. A wildfire unit in Montana wanted to know if my bird could handle high-heat insertions. And just like that, Pulse Line wasn't just a solo op anymore. We became something else. A beacon, maybe. A whisper of an old creed finding new voices. The faded flag? Still flew. But now, when people saw it, they didn't just think old vet or civilian relic. They saw legacy. They saw choices made under fire and the lives that followed because of them. And they kept coming. Not for the stories. For the truth inside them. 6 months passed like a heartbeat. I was checking weather charts in the hangar when my radio crackled. It wasn't one of the usual check-ins from the regional emergency channel. It was direct, encrypted, military. The kind that doesn't just beep politely. It roars. Pulse Line 1, this is Mountain Command. We've got a down transport in the Wasatch Range. Heavy casualties. Weather's closing. Conventional evac has scrubbed. We're requesting Sky Angel response. Do you copy? I stared at the radio. That name, Sky Angel, it hadn't come from me. Not officially. It was a nickname my crew used back in Afghanistan. Because when things got truly hopeless, and you saw our chopper drop through the smoke, it felt like a prayer being answered. I keyed the mic. This is Pulse Line 1. I copy. Send coordinates. I didn't have to think twice. I just grabbed my helmet, did a quick systems check, and rolled her out of the hangar. The engine coughed once, then growled alive. She still had fight in her. Before I lifted off, I heard another sound, rotors. Not mine. I looked up. 2 Apaches were coming in from the east, trailing like hawks behind a rising sun. And behind them? A whole formation. Chinooks. Blackhawks. Even a Coast Guard Jayhawk that must have diverted mid-route. A wave of aircraft forming a wall behind me. My radio lit up with voices. This is Apache Lead, Sky Angel. We're forming escort. Ranger Bird 6, requesting permission to fly your flank. USCG 804, cleared for rearguard. With you all the way, ma'am. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That flag on my tail? It wasn't just flying anymore. It was calling people home. We flew straight into a wall of weather. Snow, wind, zero visibility. But the transport crew was alive, 3 confirmed, 2 unknown, and time running out. The coordinates put them halfway up a ridgeline scarred by avalanche debris. No road access. No LZ wide enough for a heavy lifter. But my bird? She could thread a needle in a snowstorm. Pulse Line 1 beginning descent, I radioed. Got speed, came the reply. The approach was ugly. Crosswinds slammed me sideways. Snow blinded the windshield. I switched to instrument, counting on instinct and terrain memory. I found a patch no bigger than a living room and dropped the skids gently onto it like I was setting down a sleeping child. Inside the wreck, I found them. One with a shattered femur. One half frozen, curled around the other. I didn't ask names. I didn't need medals. I just got them aboard. And then we climbed. Those rotors screamed like banshees, straining against the wind. And right when I thought we'd be swallowed whole by the storm, there they were again. The escorts. 2 Apaches, flanking. A Blackhawk above us. They pulled me through the weather like shepherds guiding an old sheepdog back to the flock. We broke into sunlight a mile from the forward trauma station. Below, Med team scrambled like ants. I set the bird down. No grand entrance. No speeches. Just the mission complete. I watched as the soldiers were lifted out. One grabbed my flight suit, bloody fingers clutching the fabric. "You came," he said, voice thin and raspy. "Always," I whispered back. "That's what we do." As I powered down, I looked up. Every bird in the escort hovered briefly overhead, then peeled off, one by one, offering their silent thanks. I was alone again. But not really. Never really. The rescue made the rounds within hours, not on news networks or flashy websites, but through channels that mattered. Group chats between medevac crews. Forums only veterans still logged into. Dispatch recordings passed around like folklore. No headlines. No cameras. Just murmurs. Sky Angel flew through a whiteout. Again. And with each whisper, the legend grew, though I still just called it a job. A few days later, I was elbow-deep in an oil change when a new face walked into my hangar. She was young, uniform crisp, boots still carrying a bit of Texas dust. Army patch on one shoulder, medevac wings on the other. "Captain Calories," she said, extending a hand. "Fort Carson Med Evac Division. They said you're the one I need to talk to." I wiped my hands and raised an eyebrow. "About staying alive when the manual says you shouldn't be." I let out a low chuckle. "Then you're in the right place." Calla wasn't like Torres or the others before her. She didn't come to gawk at the flag or ask about the Freedom Wings mythos. She came with questions. The kind that came from experience, bad landings, rough calls, losing someone when the dust was too thick to see your own hands. I took her up twice. Let her feel the bird's movements. Let her hear how an old frame hums when she's ready to buckle, and how to know when that hum means trust me instead of this is it. She stayed 3 days. Slept in the side loft we used for gear storage. She left behind a note. "You didn't just teach me to fly in the storm. You showed me why it's worth flying into one." That's when it started. A trickle became a stream. Pilots, EMTs, even a couple of Navy flyers. They came to my hangar like it was a waypoint on a pilgrimage. Each one carrying scars, some visible, most not. Each looking for something they couldn't find on a base or in a briefing room. And I gave it to them. Not because I had all the answers, but because I still remembered the questions. One evening, I found a package on my workbench. No return label, just a note inside. "For Sky Angel, so the next ones know they're not alone." Inside was a flight suit patch. Same design as the Freedom Wings unit crest, but this one was embroidered in black and silver, with a single thread of red running through the wings. Below it, the words, "Still flying." I mounted it on the wall. Over time, others followed. Patches. Notes. A pair of dog tags left with no name. One helmet, cracked and burned but still carrying the smell of rotor grease. And at the center, that flag. It wasn't a museum. It was a memory in motion. A place where the past wasn't buried, it flew. I was in the hangar one night, lights low, just the sound of crickets outside and the quiet ticking of a cooling engine, when the call came in. Not a normal one. It came through the old UHF band, barely used anymore. Only a few of us still kept that frequency active out of habit, or maybe superstition. "Sky Angel, this is Echo Ridge. Do you copy?" My heart skipped. I hadn't heard that call sign in over a decade. I crossed the hangar, reached for the handset bolted to the wall beside the flight maps. "This is Sky Angel. I copy." The voice that came back was cracked with static and age, but familiar. "Blake, it's Hawthorne. From the Firebase Mercy pullout." I hadn't heard that name since the jungle. "Hawthorne." I whispered. "You're still alive?" "Barely. Listen, my daughter's in trouble. Car wreck. In the basin. No ground team can reach her. Weather's closing in." "Send coordinates," I said, already sprinting toward the bird. That's how it was with us. No questions. No delays. Just the mission. I pulled her out of the hangar into a sky lit by flickering lightning. Not a storm yet, but hungry for one. As I climbed, I switched over to the emergency dispatch band. Pulse line 1 airborne. Civilian extraction. Active storm. Request corridor. Denver control came on. Corridor denied. Basin zones restricted due to low ceiling and turbulence risk. I didn't respond. Instead, I clicked over to the old UHF again. "Sky Angel to all ghosts still flying. I need a corridor. I'm going in anyway." It was silent for a long beat. Then, one by one, voices came in. All familiar. All call signs from a unit that no longer officially existed. Phantom 3 on standby. Wildcat 7. I'll mark the wind. Dustdog 5. Let's make her a window. They weren't in the air. Not all of them. But they knew what I meant. One relayed satellite wind data. One patched me into a private tower near the basin. Another sent road-level weather scans from a highway patrol unit still loyal to an old code. Piece by piece, they carved me a way through. I slipped into the storm like a whisper through a locked door. The wreck was pinned in a ravine. The car upside down, barely visible between two boulders. Through my scope, I saw her, maybe 17, head slumped, but chest rising. I didn't land. Couldn't. So I did the thing we used to do in the old days. I hovered, and I dropped a basket. It took 20 minutes. A paramedic from a local search crew rappelled down, clipped her in, and guided her up. The moment her body cleared the edge, lightning split the sky and rain exploded sideways. I pulled up, banking hard out of the ravine as the first gust rocked us. The second we cleared the ridge, the sky seemed to breathe, like the storm had seen what it came for, and let us go. Sky Angel, came Hawthorne's voice again. You got her. She's on board, I replied. She'll live. He didn't say anything at first. Then, never thought I'd get to repay what you did for me. You just did. Because that's how it works. Sometimes service isn't a single moment. Sometimes it echoes, years later, in a storm you never saw coming. And sometimes, if you're lucky, the ghosts answer back. A week after the basin rescue, I found myself staring at the tarmac outside my hangar as a convoy of Humvees rolled in. Official ones. No secrecy. No back-channel favors or shadow ops. The door opened, and out stepped Colonel Riva. Still sharp. Still carrying herself like every step counted. She didn't salute. Just walked over, looked me in the eye, and held out a folder. What's this? I asked. Official reinstatement, she said. Civilian advisor rank. Training command. You be overseeing rapid response protocol for the next generation. I opened the folder. Photos, charts, rosters. A new class of pilots, half of whom had already made the pilgrimage to my hangar. I looked up. You know I already do this. Unofficially. She nodded. But the official ones need to see it too. I closed the folder and handed it back. I don't need a rank. No, she said, but they need your flag. That stuck with me. Because that was the real shift, wasn't it? This old piece of cloth on my tail faded, patched, more holes than stripes. It had never been about the colors. It was about the people who flew under it, and the ones who still did. I agreed to guest lecture. Once a month. No uniforms. No PowerPoints. Just me and my bird, walking the next class through what courage sounds like in a headset, and what a decision feels like when no one else can make it for you. They came in nervous. They left different. I started keeping a log. Not of missions, of stories. Not mine. Theirs. The young woman who froze on her first mountain descent and unfroze because she remembered something I'd said about trusting the hum of the engine. The guy who turned down a safe route to make time for a patient with minutes left and made it. They brought me their patches. I hung them on the back wall. And then, one morning, I got a call from Torres. Ma'am, he said, my brother wants to meet you. In person. We met halfway between bases, a cafe with terrible coffee and better pie. Felix Moore, older now, limping slightly, walked in wearing a weathered flight jacket and a grin that hadn't aged a day. He hugged me without a word. And then he said the one thing I didn't expect. I named my son after you. I stared at him. You didn't. Cashin, he said. It's close enough. I laughed. Then cried. Then drank the worst cup of coffee I've ever had and felt like the richest person in the world. That night, I sat in my hangar alone, watching the flag flutter in the breeze sneaking in through the cracked side door. It was more thread than cloth now, but it still flew. Still said what needed saying. That legends don't die, they teach. They guide. And if you're lucky, they come home. Winter came early that year. Thick snowfall blanketed the foothills, and the roads out of Timber Glen were already closed by the first week of November. Which meant, like clockwork, my radio was busy. One call came from a backcountry ranger station, remote, barely reachable even in good weather. A hiker had gone down. Compound fracture, maybe internal bleeding. If we didn't get to her soon, she wouldn't make it through the night. I was ready within minutes. As I prepped the bird, a new voice broke across my frequency. Sky Angel, this is Trail Watch 9. You're cleared for Mountain Corridor. We've got weather moving in from the north. Be careful out there. Always, I answered. And then, without even asking, 2 escort birds joined the flight path. Not Apaches this time, 2 smaller recon scouts. New recruits. Fresh paint jobs. One of them was Calla Reese. Ma'am, she called over the headset. We heard the call. Figured you might want some company. I'm not your CO, I replied. No, but you're the reason we're flying. That hit harder than I expected. We climbed into the wideout together, 3 small birds in a sky that looked more like a snow globe than an air corridor. The approach was tight. I had to land on a frozen ledge that didn't like visitors, but I dropped in anyway. That's what we do. We lifted the hiker out. She was in shock, hypothermic, fading fast. But she held on. I wrapped her in blankets, clipped the straps, and watched her chest rise and fall like a fragile rhythm in the dark. Reese flew beside me on the way back. You ever get tired of this? She asked. No, I said, truthfully. Just quieter. She smiled. The old guys at the base say you flew through a sandstorm in Kandahar with a busted windshield. They say a lot of things. But they all end with, and she still made it back. I didn't answer that. Some stories don't need confirming. We dropped the patient at Glenn County General. I watched the ER doors swing shut behind her, then turned to Reese before she lifted off. You ever get scared? I asked. She paused. I steady. Only when I stop hearing the flag. That made me blink. What flag? She pointed to mine. That one. The one that tells us it's okay to go farther than we're supposed to. That someone did it first. Later that night, alone in the hangar again, I stared up at it. Tattered. Torn. Still hanging on. I thought about how it had started. Just a patch of cloth, stitched together in a war zone. A promise. That no one would be left behind. No? It was a legacy. Not of medals, but of moments. Of every life lifted from the brink. Of every young pilot who looked at that flag and saw a map through the storm. I never officially rejoined the military. Never asked for rank or ceremony. But the phone still rings. Pilots still come. And the bird? She still flies. Because legends, real legends, don't retire. They just keep going. One quiet mission at a time. And when I'm gone, I hope someone takes that flag, stitches it to a new tail boom, and keeps flying into places no one else will go. Because the mission doesn't end when the rotor stops. It ends when no one else shows up. And as long as that flag flies, someone always will.